Hey everyone, I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports. This is Steve Bulpett, our NBA insider. We are talking about some issues around the NBA playoffs as they get started with the play-in games first. And if you didn't see, of course, Brooklyn taking down Cleveland in the first game, and Patrick Beverley very excited about the Timberwolves win over the Clippers, as he should be, in my opinion. But we're going to look around the league here, and I want to start with that Nets team and what you saw last night from them, and if that gives you any indication about how they'll look in the playoffs as we move forward here.
I think it was kind of hard to judge the Nets on a game against Cleveland, because Cleveland is just, they're not what they were, with injuries and just getting their stuff back together. For the most part, the Nets held the Cavs at arm's length most of the game. But it was a 6-point game with, in crunch time, and a play here or play there. But, when you have Kevin Durant who can just make a shot, it's like, I'm going to take the ball now and I'm going to shoot it and I'm going to make the shot, and there's nothing you can do about it. He has that ability to say that and be honest. It does make me change what I think about the Nets going forward. Puncher's chance at best, but that defense not going to cut it in a serious situation, I don't think.
Yeah, certainly that seems to be the knock on them, is the defense. They're middling at best, when you look at it, they've got guys who can contribute on one side of the floor. A guy like Nick Claxton can protect the rim. You've got Seth Curry, who can make shots. You switch the sides of the floor, and you don't need to play Nick Claxton at all on the other end. And Seth Curry, you can really attack him, and of course you can attack Kyrie as well on the defensive end. Looking ahead for the Celtics, is that something that, with the depth that they have and their ability to maybe make some adjustments, play different lineups, is that something you see them taking advantage of?
You mean the Celtics offense against what the Nets are going to do defensively?
Yeah, I guess their versatility as well. The fact that they can.
Yeah, the Celtics, when you're a defense that's able to switch everything, that is a huge advantage. Then again, if you're the Celtics, you probably want Marcus to be, guarding his yard with Kyrie as much as possible. So maybe he doesn't switch all those picks. Maybe he goes over the picks. Maybe he is trying to prevent Kyrie from getting to the ball in the first place once the Nets get into half court. So I don't know. You've got to worry that the Celtics try to go shootout with them and go away from their own game, which has served them very well the last few months. But it's the way I think we've discussed this before, but the way I always, I pick a playoff series is the only way I think I can do it is if each team plays to its maximum capability, if each team plays its best, who wins? Now, that's not always going to be the case, but in that case there, you would have to say that it's Boston's series if they play to their capabilities. And I'm not sure how much the Nets have the ability to interrupt that.
Well, I guess Kyrie is to me the big question mark that I'd put to you. He started off 12 for 12 yesterday, 34 points, 12 15 shooting, pretty good game. He has played well against the Celtics in these last 2 years when he finally decided to take the court against Boston, which took a little bit of time. And the Celtics have gone, I believe it's 1-7. Against Kyrie over that stretch. So when Kyrie is playing, that is. So is that a concern? Is that something that when you look at down the stretch, he's played pretty well. Can you live with just Marcus Smart guarding him and take what that gives you?
Well, as the primary defender, as the guy that gets physical with Kyrie, you're going to need that. So, I think Derek White matches up well with a Kyrie. Also, I mean, at 6'4", he's got the good length to deal with a Kyrie. So, but as great as Kyrie is, and I still happen to think talent-wise, he was one of the 75 best. But I think other issues, kept him away from that. And I'm not sure who all, how the voting came down on that. But as great as Kyrie is, and I think he's a ridiculously talented player. And he's one of the guys that I like watching him play basketball. He's a guy like you want to see this matchup? No, I want to watch Kyrie play because he just, so good with the ball. But having said all that about Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant is still, the better offensive bet, the better offensive talent, which is crazy to say that someone as good as Kyrie is clearly second to someone else, But so, yeah, I think you're going to see the Celtics throw a lot of different looks at those guys. But if the Celtics can get and stay physical, that's going to be a huge issue, a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, and you mentioned both teams playing at their peak potential. If that happens, you see the Celtics as the better team here?
I do. Yeah, I just the way the Celtics have moved the basketball, and we talk about it moving the basketball, but we also mean cutting. That's the huge part. You've got to cut first because when you want to pass it, someone's got to be open. So yeah, I think that if Boston plays that way, they're through to the next round. I think if they don't play that way, what you're going to get is what you saw prior to this run,
right?
Which was mind-bending losses, which was getting a big lead and blowing it, which is getting to crunch time and collapsing, just going really dry in the last 4 or 5 minutes of a game. And that's, if they go back to that hero ball and that kind of thing, then it's, they'll doom themselves.
Yeah, that's that. Obviously that's been the challenge, and the times when they haven't played well in the last couple months. That seems to be the thing that creeps up on them. But how about on Brooklyn's side? If they play at their peak, where do you see things where they can win? Besides obviously Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, or is that it? Does it have to be those two guys?
I think those guys are going to make it that way, but I think that if they move the ball better, and if Seth Curry is hitting well, that spaces the floor, and that gives Durant and Kyrie much more room to move, and also gets the Celtic defense rotating. And when that happens, then Kyrie drives to the basket, people collapse on him, and there's the lob for the easy jam to Drummond. So yeah, they got stuff, and we're leaving out Bruce Brown here, who has, I think, pretty well made the step up in level of his game overall. So he's a problem now, and he's one of those guys that's I think could have a really good series if the Celtics decide to load up their defenses or scheme their defense as much as possible to Durant and Irving.
Just one last thing on the Celtics. Any chance? It's ridiculous the way the series is spaced out. They play game 1 and they get 2 days off for game 2, and then they get 2 days off for game 3. So they're going to play, basically 2 games in 6 days, 5 days. It's pretty crazy. The upshot for the Celtics, though, is that game 6 could potentially come 4 weeks after Robert Williams will have had his meniscus thing. Any chance you think that we see him in this series?
I do. Yeah, I think it could come earlier than that too. It's going to be he'll be structurally fine enough to play. They didn't rearrange stuff. They took away a problem area. How he feels physically, pain tolerance wise, which I think he's doing pretty well right now. But more, I think it's going to more be a matter of how does he feel confidence-wise vis-a-vis the knee, because his game is I'm athletic, I'm going to jump around, and I'm going to, and we're talking about his athleticism with there. That requires, basketball intellect as well.
Sure. Yeah.
You got to know how to get there, what the best route is, and I think that's a huge part of the improvement in his game has been just wisdom to go with his natural gifts and the gifts that he's worked, as he's enhanced through hard work. But if he has that confidence that he can go out there and play free and easy, and jump out at a shooter, then I think you could see him come back earlier.
Yeah, and I think with the left knee that he's had trouble with that, before this, going back earlier this season, even back earlier in his career, that can be seen as a negative. I think it can also be seen as a positive where he understands what he's dealt with this before. He knows what he's dealing with. He knows when it's right. He knows how to listen to the knee probably better than most of us because he's been doing it for a long time. So yeah, there is this sense. I'm not exactly sure where it comes from, but there is this sense, that perhaps he could even come back early, and that obviously that'd be huge for them.
Yeah, I think what it's going to come down to is if he's ready to go, he'll play. I mean, if he's really ready to go. If the Celtics win the first two games of the series, and then take, definitely if they take game 3, even if he's ready, I doubt you'd see him in game 4, so, it's almost like a guy with foul trouble. If you have to sit him, how long can you go sitting him before you have to throw him back in there?
Right. Yeah. So that'll be certainly interesting to watch there. Again, I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports. This is Steve Bulpett, our NBA insider. Let me switch gears and take you to the Sixers, Steve, who, they're 19-9 after getting James Harden. I think a lot of people expected them to really be a juggernaut. Joel Embiid has played great. Certainly since the trade, and Tyrese Maxey has been good as well. But not everybody else has, and certainly not Harden. His numbers have not been all that good. 21 points, 40% shooting, 32% from the three-point line since coming to Philadelphia after a pretty lame stretch in Brooklyn before the trade. Where are you with Harden right now, and where do you think they are in terms of being a contender here?
I think for the Sixers to do really well, they don't necessarily need Harden to have great numbers, but they need Harden to understand how he needs to play, how he needs to maximize himself without the gaudy numbers. You know what I'm saying? Is like, yeah, he can take fewer shots, but he's going to have to be more accurate. He's got the numbers you talked about percentage-wise, those are going to need to go up.
Yeah.
But if he's drawing the attention, if he's drawing the defense and hitting other people, then, I don't think that's a problem. If he's getting guys wide open shots because they have to pay attention to a James Harden, then, some people will look at his numbers, they look at his numbers are down. It's like, who cares if they're winning? If he's getting Tobias Harris open looks, that's a winning formula.
Yeah, I think Tobias Harris is the real key there. He really, really struggled the first 10 games or so with James Harden. And it looked like, he was just not going to be able to adjust to that role. His last 18 games, though, 15 points, 50% shooting, 44% from the three-point line. He has been much, much better. On a team that, with the trade of Seth Curry, him exiting, they are sorely lacking in perimeter shooting. Tobias Harris can do that. He's very streaky, though, and they need him to be on a good streak if they're going to have a real chance at going anywhere in the playoffs here.
Yeah, but you say you get rid of Seth Curry and you need perimeter shooting. Well, you did bring in James Harden, who's supposed to be that for you. He's supposed to create the kind of space that allows a Tobias Harris to cut. It's supposed to allow space for Tyrese Maxey and these other guys. But and certainly we're going to talk about who can't play up in Toronto. That'll be an issue. So will that have an effect? Toronto's the kind of team that it knows who it is. They've got if their leader, quote unquote, I think would probably be a Fred VanVleet, who I think is just that kind of guy. That the kind of guy you're going to follow, and he's going to play hard, and he's going to draw other people to play the same way. And I don't think they're worried about who has their numbers and who doesn't, who has their touches, who doesn't. They go out and ball, and they've got a bunch of guys that can go out and play hard and play well. So James Harden has to play well, whether it's producing numbers or producing the kind of looks for others that get the Sixers the numbers they need. This could easily be, a series that Toronto can. I think Toronto can take the series if the Sixers show the slightest bit of organizational hiccup. It's funny. People were around Boston were talking about the Celtics going into that last game. Were they going to finish 2 or they'd rather be 3 and play Chicago. That really wasn't an option. They were either going to be 2 or 4.
It was going to be 2 or 4, right?
Yeah, and 4 was Toronto. And I think if you're Boston, Toronto might be the quote unquote easier series, but I think the fact that the Celtics might have looked at it that way could have been a problem for them. They're not going to be caught off guard in the least by the Nets. 3:30 on Sunday, they're going to tip the ball off, 3:35 or whatever the ABC wants. And that place is going to be a madhouse. Okay? I mean, it'll be one of the loudest times this season in the Garden because you've had a team that people were still showing up when they were playing poorly in November, December. But they've been playing well since. The crowd is, always there, but louder now. And when playoffs, that's going to make it louder. An opponent like Kyrie Irving, that's going to make it louder still. So, there's not going to be any opportunity for this team to be, looking ahead or maybe they might have stupid to do, but they might have taken a Toronto a bit lighter than they should. That ain't going to happen with the Nets.
Yeah. No, and I agree that Toronto's a little bit of a wild card here in this postseason. That you put it a good way, and that is they know who they are, and they are not going to shortchange themselves. They're going to get everything they can, and that's going to be tough for the Sixers because I think that's a team that's still figuring out who it is, and that's not what you don't want to see that coming into the playoffs. Especially going up against a team like Toronto. And as you say, you're not going to have your full team when you go on the road there.
Yeah, and that could be it. Hey, if Toronto gets one in Philly, the complexion of that series changes dramatically. Like you win one game in the other team's court, you get the home court, right? If you're the lower seed. But your home court advantage is even greater because of the circumstances.
Yeah, right. All right, let's change gears to another team in the East, the number 1 seed, and that's the Miami Heat. Number 1 seed, but not Las Vegas's favorite. In fact, they're probably the 3rd favorite behind Brooklyn, oddly enough, and also Milwaukee, which to me isn't odd because Milwaukee is probably the team that scares me the most in the Eastern Conference. But why do you suppose the Heat are being taken lightly? Are they being taken too lightly, you think, or do you think that's about where they should be?
I think they're being taken too lightly. They've had an up and down season, and they're a team that relies a lot on three-point shooting, and that can be an issue. It's I remember talking to Greg Popovich, a few years ago, and we're talking about just the wild mood swings in the league. And he says it's 3-point shooting. If it goes dry for a couple of days, you look like crap. If your shooting is on, if your 3-point shooting is on, then a bad team can look good for a few games. You're riding that kind of a roller coaster. And Miami relies on 3-pointers from a lot of guys. I think regular season basketball is a little hard to gauge with a team like Miami because of Butler and Kyle Lowry are two, very veteran guys. And I'm not saying they take regular season games lightly. I'm saying that subconsciously they know, when it's time, when the lights get brighter. And I do think they play hard in the regular season. It's funny, people watch on TV and think, oh, these guys aren't playing hard, but because it's all relative.
Yeah.
And
right.
if I've used this example before, I apologize. Not really, I don't. But it's funny, and I think it's important to look at it this way, and to I think we should repeat it. People don't get a true idea of how hard these guys are playing because their movements are all relative. Okay, when you're watching baseball from the center field camera, the speeds are relative, and you're watching and say, how did that guy not hit that pitch? And then you go to a game and you sit, anywhere close to the field, and you say to yourself, how did that guy see that pitch?
Yeah, right.
Seeing it from a distance, it's not the same. It's like football. Watching it from above, oh, that guy was open. Watching it from field level and having to throw a pass through, the arms and legs and heads of these large men who are after you, meaning to do you harm, it's a different gig.
Yeah.
I think these guys do play hard, but getting to the Heat with this, they turn up the screws in the playoffs, and Kyle Lowry is a certified gamer, and having that kind of experience in that spot, I think is going to be huge for them.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between what we've seen from Miami in the past and this year. That they went out and got him, and they have depth, and that's good. I don't think that'll really come. You shorten up your bench obviously in the playoffs, so some of the guys that we saw during the regular season we might not see much of. But it is also good, if you're in a playoff situation and you want to throw a change up to the opposing coach. Eric Spoelstra's got more on that bench to deal to that he can count on. No matter who it is, he's got more on that bench than the most coaches are going to have. Now, whether that comes into play, I think he'd rather not have to do that. I think he'd rather, obviously rely on the guys he has. But he does have that ability to make some adjustments that other coaches probably don't have. Yeah,
and just personally, I'd love to see him for one game. I mean, we like the old guys. I'd like to see him for one game start Udonis Haslem so he can be announced, at forward from the Villages, Udonis Haslem. He could come out with like a walker with the new tennis balls on the bottom. Yeah, look, they've got options, but they've got guys that can, they play their instrument. Spoelstra plays the instruments by which one's in tune at that time. The same way that the Pistons used to do with Vinnie Johnson. Throw him in if it's working, go get him. Tyler Hero, it's working, fire away, brother.
Yeah.
Duncan Robinson, if it's working, keep firing. If it's not, we'll give it to someone else and they'll fire away.
Yeah, it was a bold move for him to put Duncan Robinson on the bench, and but he's got that level of credibility that most coaches don't have, just for the fact that he's been there so long and has won as much as he's done. But also, it was the right thing to do. It's clear that it was the right thing to do. And now they've got a bench that really could go 9 deep altogether if they needed to.
Yeah, and remember this too, that even the best shooters, most of them anyway, go through slumps. Remember in the playoffs a bunch of years ago, in the finals, Ray Allen was in a terrible shooting slump.
Yeah, that's right.
To the point where Doc took him golfing one day, for Doc for his own benefit, but Ray's a huge golf nut as well. But seriously, it was to take him away from the game and to just let him relax, take him away from basketball for the moment. And, shooters can go through rough patches,
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that would concern me if I was the Heat is sort of their crunch time hierarchy. That's something that hasn't been great for them this year. I think if you get the ball to Lowry, that's probably your best option. It's been proven that that he can do it. But the guys who are taking the most shots in those clutch situations, which the NBA defines as, I think it's under 4 minutes and a margin of 5 points or less. You've got Jimmy Butler at 31%. Tyler Hero is it takes the second most shots. He shoots 36%. That's a tough way to win, especially if you're going to get, as you probably will, a lot of close games in the playoffs.
Yeah, but you say at the start of a year is like, oh, you can't pay attention to the numbers because the sample size is too small. Well, when it gets to the playoffs, the sample size is ridiculously small. So, to think that the numbers that we see over the course of a year are going to hold up necessarily, a guy makes 2 more shots, and his numbers skyrocket. He becomes like a 58% shooter, because you're not taking 1,000 shots. And it's what you do. And to me, it's so much game situation. Is the shot you took, even if you miss it, is it the right shot? Was it the best shot that you could take? Because if it's the best shot your team could get, then you got to take it, miss or make. Hope someone can get a tip or keep a ball alive for an offensive rebound. If not, dig in on defense, get another opportunity.
Yeah,
it's numbers. I don't buy them when it comes down to those kind of things. And I do think there are guys who step up and are more comfortable in those situations. And yeah, they say they have analytics to define that to a degree, but what's happened, what's what they say with when they try to advertise about stocks, past is not necessarily indicative of future performance.
Yeah, right.
An idea, but a guy he is shot terribly in the playoffs the last 2 years. Well, who's he matched up with in this series, in this game, in this quarter? Is it a favorable matchup where he might have been, his numbers may have been dropped down because he had some unfavorable matchups? I'm guessing that guys' numbers against the Celtics or guys' numbers are better when they're not playing against Marcus Smart than when they are.
Sure.
So, you shot terribly in the playoffs. What teams were you playing against? Did they have guys at your position who were very good defenders and screw up your numbers?
Yeah, I remember 2010 and 2011, their first year together with LeBron and Wade and Chris Bosh. There was all this discussion about who's going to take the last shot, and they were having so much trouble late in games, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they, all season we talked about it, and then first round of the playoffs we talked about it, second round of the playoffs, conference finals we're still talking about it, and it's still a problem, and then and it's like, well, they're in the finals, I mean, all right, maybe that's not their strength, but they're in the finals, and they did wind up losing that series, of course, but it was, they were one of the best 2 teams, and, we're still talking about this one thing that they couldn't do right.
Who's going to take the last shot? Don't like to answer a question with a question, but who the hell's open?
Yeah, that's who should, right.
It's like if you're, if you're denying the ball to LeBron, and he can only get it by going 35 feet from the basket, maybe he's not taking the last shot.
That's right.
If you're doubling him to get the ball out of his hands, he's probably not taking the last shot. And, it's some stuff becomes cliche and it becomes the easy question to ask. But, look, there are situations where with the Celtics, where, the ball, if you've moved it properly, will wind up in Jason Tatum's hands. But when Jason Tatum tries to, starts to go downhill, he's going to draw other defenders. So there are points in a game, and it could be the last possession with the Celtics down by a point and the clock ticking 5, 4, 3 seconds left, where the guy you want taking the last shot is Rob Williams, because you flip it up toward the basket and he puts it down.
Yeah.
So, if you were to say, hey, Celtics, who do you want taking the last shot? Who's going to take the last shot? Well, in the certain circumstance,
Right.
it's that guy there that you don't run any plays for at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, there's Steve Bulpett calling me cliche.
Fallacies all over the place. I'm rejecting fallacies into the third row. Get that weak fallacy out of here.
Calling me cliche to close out the broadcast. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. And let's all enjoy the playoffs, and we'll check in again.
All right.